This week in movie news, we round up the worst movies of 2015 and talk about trailers. A lot of trailers. Hey everybody, and welcome to Newsday Tuesday, the show where we cover all of the movie news, the box office, and most importantly, answer your questions, but all a week late. And we love talking about movie news, except when it's the end of the year and there's not much movie news, but we do have a bombardment of movie trailers and especially all of the nominations that are coming out for the awards circuit. So I want to cover a list as we start off the show for the movies that by the time January 1st comes out, we're not going to be talking about them because January and February are going to give us the worst for that year. But I want to talk about the worst movies of 2015. And what makes a worst movie isn't just a movie that really is bad, because sure, you can go to Redbox and Redbox clearly will have the top 10 worst of the year, but it's those movies that should have potential. Those movies that have a good cast or good directors or have people hyped, or the fact that they were released in theaters and then, they disappoint you and are so horrible to the point that you're like, you could have used this money for something better. So after watching well over 200 brand new movies in 2015 alone, which I hope I don't do that in 2016, just focus on the better ones, I want to talk about the films that are complete and utter, as my friend Chase would call them, garbage. And these films, these top or worst 5, don't even include Fantastic Four, which, yes, it was a big disappointment, Unfinished Business, which really was not finished, even 50 Shades of Grey or Paul Blart. I think that these 5 are even worse than those, and that's why they make the best worst list. So let's get into them, starting off with number 5. Rock the Kasbah was a movie that was not only super boring, it felt like Bill Murray didn't even want to be in there, but it was actually one of the biggest box office flops of 2015. What made it even worse was the fact that it's actually based off of a true story. But an incredible true story of a Middle Eastern woman who actually got harassed and her life was in danger just because she wanted to sing. What do they do in this movie? We're going to completely demolish that story by focusing on a drunk white guy. It was really bad. At number 4, there's Jupiter Ascending, the movie that proves that, yeah, the Wachowskis had one good movie. We're not going to call that luck or anything, because everything afterwards, it's sort of like, no, and I can't believe that people continue to give you that much money because they spent so much screen time in this movie to make one of the worst jokes, one of the worst build-ups of the year for a DMV joke. Really? At number 3, I have Jem and the Holograms, a movie that it's so bad I'm not even going to talk about. If you really want to see the perfect rant, go to my buddy the Captain Vitus, who has the perfect review to tell you how bad this movie is. But what's really surprising is the fact that this movie has the guy from The Boy Next Door trying to be a teenager. I don't know why, but it's still not the worst movie of the year. There are 2 that are worse, with the number 2 spot going to Faith of Our Fathers. But Art, that sounds a lot like Flags of Our Fathers. Do you think that they're trying to ride off the coattails of the Clint Eastwood classic? Why yes, the other me, I really do think that they're trying to do that, and that's why it's a Christian movie that they released on Father's Day to try to bank off that demographic. But real Art, you're not the type of person to diss Christian films, especially since you know that there is a specific demographic for them. I do know that, the other me, and I do believe every film needs to get a chance, but not when you're riding off the coattails of a demographic that you know is going to pay, when you just put from the producers of God's Not Dead. And this movie is such complete garbage to release in theaters because they're using flip phones in this movie. This movie was filmed so long ago, they kept it in the back burner and just released it in the summer to bank off of a demographic that they know they have right here. Garbage. At number 1, the worst movie of the year, in my opinion, Seventh Son. Yes, there are other movies that might have gotten us even more mad because we're really disappointed, but this is a movie that has not one positive thing in this movie. Not one, to the point that you're almost not even mad at it. You really just do not care for this movie. That is how bad it is, because at least other movies, even Jupiter Ascending had a scene where you're like, Channing Tatum's being treated like a dog. Other movies have unintentional things, or at least nice graphics. Not nice graphics, acting no good, directing no good. This movie was just complete garbage. And especially, it's funny since there's a whole group of people who really wanted this adaptation, since it came from a book, to be the next Lord of the Rings, that it just completely disappointed them. This is one of the worst movies of the year, but surprisingly, I'm not even mad at it. But it's still one of the worst movies of the year. However, those are the worst movies in my opinion. Definitely let me know which ones aggravated you the most, which ones you thought were just the worst of the worst, and we can discuss them down below in the comments as we cover the very short movie news week that we have this week. So as we all know, Star Wars is coming up this Thursday with the premiere and hopefully you don't get it spoiled. But it seems like Star Wars has become the December version of the Super Bowl, and where everyone is releasing their trailers hoping that it might play before that. And we got a slew of trailers this week, starting off with Independence Day 2, which flipped the whole world upside down, and it doesn't even seem like Will Smith is going to be in it. We also got the Ninja Turtles trailer, which if they keep true to what they did with the last one, regardless of people liking it, at least they're keeping with the same tone. Hopefully they copy the original sequel for the Ninja Turtles and possibly get like Justin Bieber or another artist, just like they did with Vanilla Ice. Legend of Tarzan, I believe, was released through a teaser on Vine. Star Trek looks like they beyond sabotaged the tone that Abrams tried to build. And X-Men Apocalypse is really going that biblical route, and I'm not gonna lie, it looks like it's gonna ruffle some feathers, but it also looks like it's gonna be really good. And just like that, that is the movie news for this week. Let's get into my favorite part of the show, which is answering the questions from you guys. As always, every Monday on Facebook or on Twitter, at the A to Z Show, I post a little post there where you can ask any question and just go, Mr. A to Z, I have a question dealing with movies and whatever. Or you can even ask me on the previous episode on Newsday Tuesday down below, and I'll answer it on the following one, just like these two questions. Starting off with the first one, which comes from Flickin' Awesome Reviews, and he says, how many weeks do you think Star Wars will be number one at the box office, and which movie will end up taking its place? In terms of that, Star Wars is coming out at a point where it's going to demolish anything that's coming out on Christmas. January has nothing coming out till a while, and I honestly think, I believe it's in January, like late the 29th or something like that. I feel like Kung Fu Panda may actually be the only one to dethrone it, because that's the only major movie that can come out. So that is like a month, 5 weeks, till I actually think that maybe, and that's maybe Kung Fu Panda will be the one to overthrow it, because other than that, every other movie is not going to come close at all. Although I know Right Along 2 comes out at a certain point, and I'll be, if Kevin Hart is the one who actually demolishes it, no, that's not going to happen. Marco9000 asks, what do you think they would do with the Shinigami in the American version of Death Note? I personally think they might make them human as in little actors, which I would hate, but they might screw up the original designs. Now, I'm not the biggest anime fan, but Death Note is actually one of the very few that I actually got into a little bit, because one of my buddies, MC Music actually, it was big, or is big into anime, and I watched some episodes of Death Note, and I know what the character designs look like. And I think that if they were to do it right, Doug Jones and Guillermo del Toro are the people to go with that. But as we saw with Attack on Titan, another anime that they tried to adapt, it looked really ugly. It did not work for live action. So I believe that anime is one of those things that a majority of the time, it's better when you just stick with the animation and not try to make it live action. Flip asks, what is a movie? Well, Flip, a movie is a story that is told through actors who are pretending, and you have a film crew, and they film it through a camera, they digitalize it, and then when they release it, they do witchcraft over it so people can actually like the movie. Chase asks, how much money do you think Star Wars is making domestically this weekend? And I think that overall, it will pass the 500 mark, I believe, especially since Christmas, and there's going to be nothing else that really fits that demographic of comedy, family, adventure, drama, all of those things. Domestically, I think it will probably, I don't know, it might beat the record. I know it's going to get well over 200. You know what? I'm going to say 220. That's what I'm saying. Ryan asks, is any movie screwed if they come out the same week as Star Wars week? I think that Sisters will make the amount of money that it would have made regardless of anything else. I think it will actually do well. Someone will go to the theater and be like, well, I don't feel like watching Star Wars, or I already saw it, and then go see Sisters. Alvin, I think, will be the one to hurt the most, because as a family film, Star Wars is going to be the one that's chosen over it. But, you know, this is the fourth Alvin film. Maybe they'll continue going. Ian asks, does Mad Max Fury Road have a good chance of getting nominated for Best Picture and Director at the Oscars? And it's funny because this is an actual bet that's going on between two friends of mine, and seeing with the Golden Globes and other things, in my own personal opinion, I think it highly deserves being nominated for Best Picture, for Best Cinematography, and for Best Director. But I also feel the same thing for Creed. But the question is on Mad Max, and I honestly do think it deserves it, and I think it might actually have a chance. Daniel Asbel says on Twitter, how far do you think the gap will be at this weekend's box office between Star Wars and whichever movie is number 2? And as I'll just put you the list for what was the box office last week, we see that In the Heart of the Sea was the only one to really come in there. I think that The Hunger Games will continue to stay on that spot, but I don't think The Hunger Games is going to make more than what you see right there, that $11 million. If anything, I think Hunger Games will come in at 9, and as I just answered previously, it is like 200 something million dollars that Star Wars will make. So yeah, there's going to be like a 200 million gap between the two. But that was the questions for this week. As always, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on the movie news, on the box office, which the question would be, Star Wars, Alvin and the Chipmunks, or Sisters? Which will you be watching? We all know we don't have to answer that. But I always want to know your questions. So next week on Monday on Facebook or Twitter at the A to Z Show, ask me your questions. Or if you think of one throughout the week, down below in the comment section of the previous Newsday Tuesday, and I'll answer it then. So continue to watch movies. Have fun watching Star Wars. Hopefully it doesn't get spoiled for you. And also, MC Music and I worked on another wrap-up, this time for November, where we literally wrap up the movies of November. Definitely go check it out and let us know your thoughts, but also let us know your favorite movie that came out in November. Continue to watch movies, and until next week, I'll see you guys later.